Today, I'm going to walk you through 5 thinking traps that hurt people's mental health. These traps are also called cognitive distortions, and here's what makes them so sneaky. Your brain isn't throwing these thoughts at you randomly, it's doing it on purpose for very specific reasons. The problem is that those reasons don't always serve you. These thoughts tend to be more negatively skewed than reality actually is, or they're just flat out unhelpful. And when we attach to them, they affect our mood for hours, days, and sometimes weeks. What I want to do today is not just name these traps, but actually give you tools to escape them, because knowing the name of something is only half the battle. That being said, let's get into it. The first thinking trap is all or nothing thinking. This is when your mind sees everything in extremes. Something is either great or it's terrible. A person is either amazing or they're the worst. There's no middle ground, just two camps, good and bad. And here's the thing, your brain does this on purpose. We live in an incredibly complex world, and the mind is constantly trying to simplify information so it can make sense of things and predict what comes next. Sorting people and situations into neat categories is efficient. It's fast. The problem is that the world doesn't actually work that way. Most people have qualities that are both admirable and frustrating. Most situations have elements that are both good and bad. Something that feels terrible right now might be the best thing that ever happened to you a year from now. Something that feels great in the short term might cost you later down the road. Reality is nuanced, and all or nothing thinking strips all of that away. Here's an example. Say something goes wrong early in the morning. Maybe you spill coffee on yourself, you're late to a meeting, whatever it might be. All or nothing thinking immediately stamps the entire day as ruined. And because you've decided the day is ruined, your mood follows. You stop looking for anything good. You have already written it off. That is the trap. One of the most effective things you can do when you catch this happening is simply label it. Say it out loud in your head. My mind is doing all or nothing thinking right now. That single act of awareness is surprisingly powerful. It creates a little bit of distance between you and the thought, and it tends to stop it in its tracks. But if you want to train your brain to do this less automatically, the longer-term practice is learning to see shades of gray. Take a situation and actually write down what was good about it and what was bad about it. Then look at the full picture. This works because you're essentially forcing your brain to weigh all the evidence before drawing a conclusion, kind of like a courtroom where both sides get to present their case. The verdict ends up being more balanced. Are there situations or people that are genuinely all good or all bad? Sure, but those are far less common than your brain would have you believe. Thinking trap number 2, overgeneralizing. This has some overlap with the first trap, but it's distinct enough to deserve its own spotlight. Overgeneralizing is when you take one negative event, one data point, and let it define everything. You make a math mistake on your test and suddenly you're bad at math. You stumble through one presentation at work and now you're a bad public speaker. You go on one awkward date and your brain whispers, "This is just what happens to me." One small thing becomes a sweeping conclusion about you as a person. Your brain does this partly out of simplicity. Again, it loves shortcuts, but there's also a strange motivational logic to it. The brain amplifies mistakes, sometimes in an attempt to help you avoid them in the future. The execution is just deeply unhelpful, and we do this to other people too. Someone walks past you wearing something unusual, and before you know it, your brain has already written their entire life story. You haven't spoken a word to them, but your mind has already decided. And while there might occasionally be a small grain of accuracy in those snap judgments, mostly what they do is create blind spots and make us more judgmental than we actually want to be toward others and toward ourselves. A really useful tool for this one is what I'd call a coping reminder. One moment doesn't define the whole. A mistake doesn't make you a failure. A bad performance doesn't make you incompetent. A rough conversation doesn't make you bad at relationships. So what you're doing is you're taking a piece of data and you're keeping it as a piece of data, not turning it into a permanent label. And again, the labeling the distortion technique works beautifully here too. When your brain starts overgeneralizing, just catch it. I'm overgeneralizing right now. That awareness is often enough to interrupt it. Thinking trap number 3, catastrophizing. This is one where your brain sprints straight to the worst possible outcome before you even have enough information to know what's actually happening. You get an unexpected text from a family member that just says, "Hey, can you call me?" And suddenly your stomach drops. You haven't even called yet, and your brain is already running worst case scenarios. What if something happened? What if someone's in the hospital? What if... And the spiral just keeps going on from there. Or maybe your boss sends you a vague email asking to meet. Before you even open the meeting invite, your mind is already rehearsing how to respond to being fired. You're calculating your savings, wondering how long you could last without a paycheck, mentally composing a LinkedIn post. And then you get into the meeting and they just want to talk about the project deadline. Your brain does this to protect you. It's trying to prepare your body for danger so you can react quickly if the worst actually does happen. That instinct made a lot of sense when humans were dodging real physical threats. In modern life, it mostly just generates a ton of unnecessary anxiety about things that never actually happen. A technique from acceptance and commitment therapy that I really like for this is actually acknowledging the brain rather than fighting it. You can literally say out loud, "Thank you, brain, for trying to protect me. I've got this." It sounds a little silly, but what it does is honor the intent behind the thought without letting it impact you. You're not suppressing the anxiety, you're just choosing not to let it drive. And yes, you can also catch it with the labeling technique. My brain is jumping to worst case conclusions right now. Naming it creates space between you and the spiral. Thinking trap number 4, mind reading. This one is subtle, but it might be one of the most socially damaging traps on this list. Mind reading is when you assume you already know what someone else is thinking, usually about you. Someone glances at you in a meeting and looks slightly unimpressed. Immediately, your brain fills in the blank. They think I'm not qualified for this. Or you're telling a story to a group of people and one person doesn't laugh, and your brain is already convinced. They think I'm so annoying. You haven't asked them anything. You don't actually know, but your brain has decided, and it decided fast. Here's what makes mind reading particularly tricky. Most of the time, what we think other people are thinking about us is actually just a projection of what we think about ourselves. It's not usually their voice, it's yours, dressed up in their face. Your brain is essentially outsourcing your own inner critic and placing it inside someone else's head, which makes it feel way more threatening than it actually is. Your brain does this as kind of a social shield. If it can anticipate judgment before it arrives, maybe you can avoid embarrassment. But the cost is that you spend an enormous amount of mental energy responding to things that were never actually even said. One of the most grounding reminders for this trap is simply this. You don't actually know what someone thinks about you unless they tell you directly. Yes, there are micro expressions, body language, tone, and reading social cues is a legitimate skill. But filling in the blanks with your worst fears is not a social skill. It's anxiety dressed up as intuition. Leaning into the discomfort helps here too. It's okay to feel a little self-conscious sometimes. That's human. It doesn't mean the story your brain wrote about what someone else is thinking is actually real. And whenever you catch it happening, my brain is mind reading right now, label it and let it pass. Thinking trap number 5, disqualifying the positive. You finish a project and your boss tells you it was excellent. Your immediate internal response, well, it wasn't that hard, or anyone could have done that. Or you run a personal record on a run and someone congratulates you and you say, the conditions were good today. Something goes really well and your brain immediately finds a way to explain it away or to minimize it or just attribute it to luck. This is one of the more insidious traps because it's often disguised as humility. We associate dismissing our own accomplishments with being modest and being grounded, but there's a real difference between genuine humility and habitually erasing your own wins. The long-term effect is that your brain stops registering your efforts as meaningful, and when your effort stops feeling meaningful, it becomes harder to stay motivated and harder to build genuine confidence. One change that can really help you is reframing what you praise yourself for. Don't praise fixed traits. Don't tell yourself, I am so talented or I'm naturally good at this. Research consistently shows that that kind of self-talk actually backfires. What you want to do instead is acknowledge effort. I did something difficult and I followed through. That's amazing. And that is something that you can build on. A useful question to ask yourself after you accomplish something, especially when you feel the urge to minimize it, is, what does the fact that I did this say about me? Sit with it. Don't rush to dismiss it. Let the answer actually land. The other practice I love for this is what I call the positive scavenger hunt. At the end of the day, instead of just thinking about what went well, go a step further. Ask yourself why it went well. What did you bring to that moment? What did you do that made it happen? And to be clear, this isn't about inflating your ego. It's about training your brain to notice your own competence as it notices your mistakes. The more you practice it consciously, the more your brain starts doing it automatically in the background without you having to force it. So these 5 thinking traps rooted in your brain generally try to help you. They try to protect you, simplify things for you, prepare you for the worst, keep you away from embarrassment. The brain isn't your enemy here. It's just using outdated strategies that tend to create more suffering than they prevent. The single most powerful technique that runs through all 5 of these traps is the one that costs you nothing and works almost instantly. It's labeling. When you can catch the thought and name what it's doing, you immediately create distance between you and the thought. You stop being inside the thought and start being the person observing the thought. And from that position, you actually have a choice about what to do next. The longer practices, writing out evidence, the positive scavenger hunt, coping reminders, those are things that actually rewire your brain, but they take repetition. But over time, your brain will start defaulting to more balanced, more accurate thinking without you having to work as hard for it. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you, and see you in the next one.